Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX14 Walsh and welcome to an all new World of Warships gameplay. In this episode I'll be sailing out in the Tier VIII American Battleship known as the North Carolina in a Tier VIII Domination match on the map Neighbours. As I analyse the gameplay, I would like to draw your attention to two main areas for discussion. The first, managing speed. Throughout the battle I will be altering the speed of my North Carolina in anticipation of certain threats, particularly torpedoes. And secondly, threat assessment. Where appropriate, I plan to use my knowledge of the enemy ship's capabilities to assess and subsequently prioritise targets. With the forward covered, let's get into the gameplay. Taking a look at the team sheet, the only thing that really comes to my attention is the fact there are a large number of destroyers aside. With there being 4 destroyers on each team, that means there's going to be a lot of potential torpedoes in the water, and we need to be wary of this potential threat. Looking at where I spawning in on the southwestern edge of my team, that mandates that I really need to go towards Objective Alpha or Bravo. Now some of you may be wondering, what would the North Carolina's top speed being 27.5 knots, why do I not try to go towards Charlie because I can get there at a good pace? The problem is I'm concerned about my initial impact in the engagements that occur across the objectives. If I head towards Charlie, when the enemy ships start firing at one another, I'll be roughly 16 to 18 kilometers away from my targets. This means that whilst I can probably land some rather devastating salvos or the plunging armour piercing shells of my 406mm cannon, they're not guaranteed to be that accurate. With the North Carolina having 2.0 Sigma, it's down to my gunnery skills and making sure that my opponents do not change vector at the last possible second. Whereas, if we head towards Objective Alpha and engage the enemy fleet, the engagement distance is probably going to be 14 kilometers or less, and I'm going to be able to guarantee more accurate salvos at that point, subject to dispersion, not throwing up a bad salvo. Hence the logic of going to Alpha. As I'm making my way over, I should point out that I am in a division with my good friend Z, who has brought out the Tier VIII Premium American carrier, the Saipan, and he's doing a fantastic job with his initial set of rocket planes of spotting the majority of the enemy team. In fact, I think he goes on to spot the entirety of the enemy team. And this gives us all a great intel, and for me, it gives me critical intel on what is going towards Objective Alpha. 3 battleships and at least 1 destroyer. The battleships I'm not too concerned about. The destroyer on the other hand, that's good information. The Akatsuki, the Tier VII Japanese torpedo boat destroyer with rather lethal 3x3 torpedo sets of 10km range, which are absolutely devastating when they hit a target. Now we can see that the Akizuki and the Z-23 are making a beeline towards Objective Charlie to face off against our Lightning, and the enemy Icarus is undecided on where they're going, although I would wager they're heading towards Alpha for 2 reasons. One, if they were going towards Charlie when Z initially spotted the Icarus, it would have been really heading there fast. And secondly, if it was going for Bravo, it's got roughly the same top speed as the Kagera on our team, and our Kagera is being allowed to take Bravo unhindered so far. So that would suggest the Icarus has got to be going towards Objective Alpha. Now I'm not too worried about the Icarus because its torpedo range is only 7 kilometers maximum from what I recall, if not 6, so they're going to only really be torpedoing us at a very close range to their maximum concealment. So they'll give themselves away pretty much when they go to torpedo us, whereas the Akatsuki can stealth torpedo. Now I'm doing a little bit of long range gunnery here with the spotter plane of the North Carolina, taking our range from 23.3 kilometers all the way out to 27.9 kilometers. I'm going to throw one last salvo at the enemy Budioni, and let's see if it makes its mark. Probably not quite the salvo that you were expecting. You're probably expecting it to be a devastating strike, but I'm still very pleased to have chipped off 7,000 HP and practically a third of the Budioni's health. I'll get better over time. Now looking towards Alpha, the enemy Akatsuki has been spotted by the destroyer screen. Our Farragut and our Shiratsuyu forming that screen very comfortably here, and I'm looking at the distance the Akatsuki is to my own ship and roughly gauging how I bring that down to 10 kilometers. And seeing where the Akatsuki is at 11.5 kilometers, this confirms to me, right, the Akatsuki probably isn't going to push any closer because of the threat of our Farragut, who can take the Akatsuki on a straight up gunfight at close range comfortably. But if I hang just off of the southern edge of Objective Alpha, I'm going to be just beyond 10 kilometers, and that means the Akatsuki cannot torpedo my ship. And this also gives me the ability to set myself up nicely to create a corridor against the incoming enemy battleships. And you'll note that I've slowed my ship down now, I'm cutting my speed entirely, and I'm bringing the bow of my ship just around and pointing it between the Akatsuki and the Amagi. The idea of this being, as I stay at quarter speed just to finish off the final touches to my bow positioning, that once I've got my bow directly between these two ships, it's set up to angle against incoming armour piercing from the enemy battleships, and it's set up to be pointing towards the potential torpedo launch location from the Akatsuki if they do get closer. So this allows me to minimise the amount of damage I take from incoming armour piercing, whilst at the same time give me the opportunity to react to incoming torpedoes if I do get too close or the Akatsuki gets close enough against our destroyer screen. Thinking ahead to the next step, what I'm looking at on the minimap right now is the fact the enemy Icarus is definitely here. It's been confirmed that they're just off of the northern side of Objective Alpha, and our Kagero is actually set up very nicely in Objective Bravo, not to go towards Objective Charlie, which we're losing, but more so to come down here and set up a crossfire of our team. So what I'm doing at this point is I'm starting to reverse a little bit, because I can see the incoming torpedoes off to my port side from the Akatsuki, which are not going to reach me, but more so to try and encourage the enemy battleships to come further on. What I want them to do is feel comfortable that they can come further and further towards Objective Alpha and not think about potential torpedoes from our Kagero, who is off to what would be their eastern vector according to the minimap. And our Kagero is going to make their way over and throw torpedoes down, as we'll see a bit later. But in the meantime, I can use this as an opportunity to farm some damage against the battleships, particularly that Colorado in the background, who got fortunate there with our poor dispersion, but hopefully they won't get away with it a second time, or them giving us a clean broadside against our 406mm cannon. So we're getting ready for the follow-up salvo, and looking at the minimap at this point, I'm starting to think about what is going to happen in the next 3 to 5 minutes. We just lost our Trento, which isn't too much of a factor because the Trento is out of position. The enemy destroyers look to be, the ones down here, look to be starting to fall back. Well, the Icarus practically dead, it's now been taken out, and the Akatsuki seems to be holding back behind a smokescreen of their own and throwing torpedoes out, whilst our Shiratsuyu is in their own smokescreen and taking the fight back and forth. So really here I'm very comfortable and I'm not worried about what's going to happen. I think we've got Alpha under control, particularly with our Tirpitz pushing forward and through. We've also now got our Scharnhorst and New Mexico getting into the fight. But what is happening and what is the bigger threat at this point in time is the fact that when we look off to the minimap and look towards Objective Charlie, we can see an Algerie, a Nizao, a Budiani, a Z-23 and most likely the Miyakizuki are all coming down this way. And they're heading towards Objective Bravo. They want to take it and essentially lock our team, the remnants of our team, because the only other thing we've got outside of Objective Alpha at the moment is the Kagero, who's pushing their way further northwest, and the Helena, who's heading into Bravo. We're all condensed down into this small square as we pick up a citadel there on the Amagi broadsiding. So I need to get ready to turn towards Bravo. I've spent enough time here contributing to this fight. I'm not going to turn immediately because otherwise I'm going to give broadside to both the Colorado and the Amagi, but I'm getting ready to make the turn. And the one thing that really needs to go before I can make the turn comfortably is the Akatsuki, and with our team seeming to not want to take the ship out right now, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. Now, having eliminated the Akatsuki, I'm not immediately going to start hitting the rudder hard over to starboard, because what I'm thinking in my head is, what if the Akatsuki launched torpedoes, expecting me to keep going forward? So what I'm doing right now is I'm cutting my speed down once again. I'm anticipating the incoming torpedoes, and I'm turning my bow just slightly between the Colorado and the Amagi. So what I'm expecting is armour piercing to come from these ships, particularly the Amagi, and I don't want to be on the receiving end of a load of shells going from my broadside and ripping the North Carolina to pieces. Because she is a ship, despite her armour ranging from 13 all the way through to 406mm, when she is caught on the broadside, she can be shredded quite easily. But when we angle appropriately, our bow armour of 32mm does a fantastic job of throwing off the incoming armour piercing shells, because it can only be overmatched by guns in calibre of 458mm or higher. Now looking towards the Amagi one last time, Z has taken out the Colorado, which releases me. I know that if I had seen torpedoes from the Akatsuki, they would have come past me by now or hit me, so I feel comfortable to turn in towards Bravo, finishing off the Amagi as I do with another citadel, and I'm ready now to take on the Nizao and the Budiani. And it's good timing as well, because they've pushed well into Bravo, and I've mitigated the potential broadside I could have given to them. Some shells go over my ship. You can see that the Nizao was planning to shoot on the basis that I was going in a straight line rather than turning towards them, and now we can take on the next threat. Now I'm focusing the Budiani first for two reasons. One, they're squishy, but secondly, because they've got all the cap points here, and I want to delay the enemy team in taking Bravo. Albeit I didn't expect to get a devastating strike there, what the shells going straight in through the bow of the Budioni and overmatching the fore end completely, but I'll take it. Now the Z-23 laying a smokescreen in Bravo is something I now have to think about. What do I know about the Z-23 and also the Akizuki who's behind the Nizao? I know these are both destroyers with 10km range torpedoes, or roughly that. I need to think about the radius of their torpedoes versus my ship. Now I'm well within the torpedo radius of the Z-23 in particular. I'm at 7.8 kilometers right now and they're starting to head away, but if they threw down torpedoes, you'll probably be at about 7.5 kilometers. I can't escape it. If I go in full reverse right now, I cannot get out of that radius before the torpedoes hit my ship. They're too fast. But what I can do is start to reverse away, but at the same time also reverse away from the Nizao, who's very dangerous up close due to the combination of their secondaries and also their 6km torpedoes. But at the same time I'm keeping an angle which is between the Nizao's current position and where I think the torpedoes have come from the Z-23 and where the torpedoes may come from in the future from the Akizuki. And also now look at the minimap, me being here and just holding my ground, just giving it little bits of ground as we go along, but holding my ground primarily, I'm setting up a new crossfire between myself and my teammates who can shoot the enemy ships from the north. What if our Scharnhorst, our Kagero, our Tirpitz, our Farragut all being north of my current position, it puts the Nizao in particular in a very uncomfortable battle position because they need to angle to either deal with me or deal with our threat up in the north, and now they're turning full broadside to me and pointing themselves right at our northern teammates. But in return that enables me to do a lot of damage on the broadside to the Nizao, and also keep in mind what are them turning across their Akizuki right now, the Akizuki can't launch torpedoes at me, or they're going to have to launch them around the Nizao, which limits their firing arc. The Z-23 is still within 10 kilometers of me, so I am expecting torpedoes to still be in range. But what if the Akizuki haven't been delayed potentially in throwing their torpedoes towards me, I feel very comfortable not having to angle my ship directly at the Nizao to deal with the potential triple threat. What the Z-23 now falling, myself having taken out the Nizao, and now I can begin to angle against the Akizuki. And here's those torpedoes I mentioned from the Z-23, and because of the angling, I'm only going to take one. And on top of that, I'm going to take it right on the torpedo belt, which will reduce the damage received by 19%. It's not a great torpedo belt, but at least it limits some of the damage, and now I'm keeping my bow pointed in its current position because that was the position I reckoned that the Akizuki threw their torpedoes at me from. We'll see if it's confirmed to us very shortly. In the meantime now, the game is pretty much won, albeit the Akizuki could pull a magical recovery off in tandem with their carrier and the Algerie, so we just need to get the Akizuki out of the game to guarantee the victory. The torpedoes have come past, we correctly predicted those, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go charging towards the Akizuki. We're going to take them head on. Now the reason I want to do this is twofold. Firstly, I feel comfortable in being able to anticipate the Akizuki's movements. And secondly, if I'm pointing towards them all the time, they've either got to do one or two things. They've either got to run from me, and that gives Z with his carrier planes the ability to chase the Akizuki down, or he's got to come charging past me, the Akizuki, and hit me on the broadside at very close range. It makes it very uncomfortable for him to play. Battleships should not normally be hunting destroyers down. So that's why I'm heading immediately towards the Akizuki, and by pointing my bow towards the smokescreen, that guarantees my best possible ability to dodge the incoming torpedoes, particularly if he's using the torpedo reloader booster consumable. So in going in, I am aware of the potential threat of the torpedoes, I'm ready to react to it, and at the moment I'm heading at full speed towards the Akizuki, but as I get closer and closer, I'm going to start cutting my speed. The reason I'm going to cut my speed is A, I want to let our Farragut go in front. I want him to be the screen because he's more nimble and he can point himself between the torpedo lines. But on top of that as well, I want to throw off the Akizuki's mind. I want them to think, yeah, that North Carolina player seems rather aggressive. They're coming right towards me. And if they do decide to come out thinking they're going to surprise me at close range, suddenly the North Carolina is still sitting at 5 kilometers from their ship, for talking's sake. Yeah, I wasn't as aggressive as the Akizuki player may have thought. So that's why I'm just gradually snaking towards the smokescreen. And again now, starting to cut my speed back down. You can see that in the bottom left hand corner of your screen. Really cutting the speed down here in case the Akizuki's actually pulled a blinder and tried to retreat all the way back off to the left hand side, so heading around to my port side and using the landmass to shield their escape. But as we get closer, we spot them through the natural distance of 2 kilometers and we pick up our Kraken. And we avoided the torpedo set that came out of the smokescreen, which I reckon if I carried on the initial path of heading towards the what would have been the southwestern edge of the smokescreen according to the minimap, or far off to my starboard side, which is where the Akizuki was last seen when they were deploying the smoke, then yes, the torpedoes would have clipped my bow quite hard. but instead by taking time to think about the potential movement, we limited that potential damage and the victory has been picked up. With the battle over, we can see that our battle performance amounted to a total damage output of 125,318 HP. We also picked up the following achievements: Devastating Strike as achieved against the Budiani, Confederate, Fireproof and Kraken Unleashed. Moving on to the team scores, we can see that we placed top of our team in terms of base experience earned with 2028 XP. Our role over the course of this match was to provide heavy firepower support in the contest for Objective Alpha. In doing so, we manipulated our ship's speed in order to stay close to Alpha, but not to overextend into the objective and thereby into the clutches of the enemy destroyers and battleships lying in wake. In turn, this enabled us to angle our ship's armour effectively to mitigate the enemy battleship's armour piercing shells, while simultaneously staying out of the reach of the enemy destroyer's torpedoes, particularly the Akatsuki. We evolved our role into the contest for Objective Bravo at the midpoint of the match. Having used the minimap to assess that the key enemy threat at this stage was by the Budiani Akazuki Z23 Knives Owl combination heading southwest from Objective Charlie. Again, we used speed management to avoid overextending into the clutches of our newfound opponents, whilst also setting them up to extend into a crossfire between our ship and the rest of our team who were positioned in the northwest. Once the enemy threat at Bravo had been eliminated, it was just a case of carefully eliminating the Akazuki to secure victory. As for our detailed report, we have no key items to note today and shall move on. Finally, coming on to credits and experience earned, we can see that after additions and deductions, we took away 280,771 silver credits and 7,030 commander experience. To conclude, I would argue that one of the most difficult aspects of battleship gameplay is managing your speed in relation to the threats that lie nearby. Poor speed management can quickly lead to a battleship overextending and being rapidly worn down by enemy fire, even more so if the ship's captain underestimates the threat posed by the enemies that lie in wait. However, with due speed management, one can position their battleship to extract the maximum possible damage output from its guns over an extended period of time. When this is combined with a captaining mentality of always reassessing the threat that lies ahead, this can make said battleship far more difficult to sink for our opponents. As a result, forward thinking can help a battleship go the distance when it matters most. With that, I've been TX141. If you have enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future World of Warships videos on my channel. Alas, that is all I've got time for today, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, as always, I bid you fair winds and following seas.